are ya?
Good. How about you, Huli?
I'm good. Hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome to House Rules, a TTRPG talk show where each week we interview somebody creative and interesting from the TTRPG space and sometimes the Heroes and Hooligans community too. This week with us, we have Logan the DM. Logan is a D&D 5e homebrew content creator that draws inspiration from anime and queer culture. He has a 7-year history of both playing and running D&D and other TTRPGs such as Fate, the Dragon Age TTRPG, and Lancer. He can primarily be found on Twitter talking about his own TTRPG game experiences and trying to stoke the fires of creativity for himself and others. He is also an aspiring actual play actor, just getting his feet wet and trying to get as much experience as possible. He says that he is still relatively green to the scene, so it might be hard to find him, but he hopes to become someone that you will find hard to miss. And I have noted here that your first actual play appearance was over with our friends at Queen's Court Games on their Delta Green conversion show.
That's correct. You
That
can find me as Agent Eastman over there.
Fantastic. Tell us about Delta Green.
Delta Green.
I've never played it. I don't know anything about it.
So, forgive me, everyone who is watching this, who is familiar. If I remember correctly, it's a bit of a hack of the Call of Cthulhu game system.
Okay.
But imagine it like you play a government agent, a la X-Files or Men in Black, probably closer to X-Files than Men in Black, because you don't get the cool gadgets just because there are spooky things going on. But like X-Files, there's a whole bunch of spooky, weird things going on, and your job is to solve the problem before it becomes, I would say, one, unmanageable, and two, too many people are aware of the weird in the world, because you don't want everyone to be aware of the weird. So
That sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like a lot of fun. And that's actually a really cool experience for your first actual play, since you center most of your content around D&D, correct?
Yeah, primarily almost exclusively D&D. That's what a lot what I work with, but that's just like a familiarity situation. I probably would make homebrew for other things. Actually, I'm in the works of making homebrew for Lancer, because all of a sudden someone told me giant mech tabletop game, and I'm like, cool, can I make a Gundam? And since Gundams don't exist in the Lancer universe, I gotta make a Gundam myself. So
did it get a special nomenclature or identifier?
Can you say again? Can you explain that again?
Did you call it something like what did you call your Gundam?
I'm working on it right now. It's me learning a new system and figuring out.
Gotcha.
I mean, the goal would probably just be like, hey, friends, do you like Gundam like I do? And they'll say, sure, Logan, we believe that you love Gundam enough for the rest of us. And then I'll just run them through a Gundam campaign, which usually involves child soldiers and war. So,
Well, that was something I was going to ask. As I was researching, i.e. stalking your Twitter, I noticed a lot of references to and retweets of anime-related content and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask, how that really plays into, say, your D&D experience, or and it looks like you're exploring other avenues and systems that would allow you to go directly into that anime space. But has it affected your Dungeon and Dragon space?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone wants to have, I think we've called it hero moments our entire life, but the anime hero moment is the moment where all hope is lost. But it turns out that, some little hiccup, some little thing that was slowing you down was actually the little boost you needed to become the hero in the moment. So I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, so in my mind, the montage episode of, doing ridiculous training and getting super buff and beefy for the final fight is awesome. I almost every time I will try to have my players do a tournament arc episode because they love the tournament arc. They love, we leveled up. Let's do what can I do with my new level? What is relatively safe? Because a dungeon, a gelatinous cube can come down the hallway and now you got to run. But in a tournament, we can assume that people aren't going to let you fight to the death unless it's like a gladiatorial situation. So they can go like, well, will I die? No, you'll survive this one. It'll be fine this time. So definitely full inspire from anime all the time. One of my oldest bits of subclasses is like for homebrew was a Oath of the Moon Paladin subclass, which is completely based off Sailor Moon. So
yes, all right.
Love it.
I would have loved to have seen that.
I'll see if I can dig it up, and it's about time to repost it. So
yeah.
So you really love anime. And a lot of times in anime, characters have some sort of, we'll say, superpower, right?
Yeah.
If you had a choice right now between two superpowers, flying and invisibility, which would you choose and why?
This is a classic. So I want to say invisibility because it's a lot more practical. Flying, you can't actually go that high up before you start losing oxygen. And it's think about it. Like actually think about it. Bugs would get in your teeth. You would get really cold. I absolutely hate the cold. Everyone's like, I hate the summer. I'm like, I don't care. I'll wear a coat in summer. Like I absolutely despise the cold. But like being invisible, like outside of like you could go, ooh, think of all the nefarious things you could do, or you can just go like, this is an awkward situation. Look over there, and then I'm just gone.
Gone.
This, like the practical uses of invisibility greatly outweigh flight, except when you want to go across the country, which then maybe you stow away on a plane. The plane's a little bit heavier, uses a little bit more fuel, but yeah, who knows what that is.
Wow. I've never had somebody put it in such practical terms, because you're right. Flying would require almost another array of superpowers in order to avoid a lot of inconveniences and nearly lethal environments.
Think of Superman. Like Superman has all these things that he can do because back in the day they didn't really know how to quantify superpowers. We still don't really know how to quantify superpowers, but at least I can acknowledge, of course this guy can fly. He makes a hidden fortress in like an ice field. He like can punch trains. Like this is not a normal person. So of course flight is just another caveat that he gets, being the Superman. So
on the topic of Superman, and I know we're like way off tangent, though I've heard it's not flight, it's he's jumping very, very far.
That's like the old, I think this is my geek history. I think it was originally comics, he could just jump really high. If I remember correctly, when they started doing radio plays, I think they wanted to add some more stuff to him, and they just said, "Oh no, he just flies." I think it was just like maybe more convenient. If you actually go into like the radio play eras of like comics, which we should get back to, we should totally have radio plays on like for superheroes. I think that'd be great. I mean, I'm sure someone's doing that right now, but yeah, like. It was just probably easier to somehow narratively say, and then he flies, play sound effect.
And
versus,
he takes
and
off.
Then
Yep. Leaving Earth's gravity. Yeah. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the superheroes, right? The good guys. So on the adverse side, you DM for D&D. So you've read the Monster Manual, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think is the coolest monster in the Monster Manual, or in, you could even go farther out into TTRPG
Yeah.
space past D&D if you wanted. But what do you think is the coolest monster? Like, what is your go-to as a DM? Like, this is the coolest shit. I'm using it as much as possible.
Rakshasa, totally tiger demon creature. Just
Yes.
hands, 2 left hands, immune to low-level spells. Great way to mess with your spellcasters is just like, well, I'm going to use a 3rd level spell. It legitimately, the universe says no to this. And there's nothing, I think, more fascinating than a creature that actually breaks all known rules, because there's nothing else that does that. And like, you can fight, their 5th dragon, but once you beat one, you kind of know it's going to fly, it's going to do its breath weapon, it's going to try and avoid the marshals and go after the casters. It's got its flight plan figured out. A Rakshasa, you never know what they're going to do. I mean, they're shapeshifters. They can just kind of hide away. They might even have plane shift. I'm really not sure, but like, they're scary and they're fun, and you don't even have to necessarily.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish it. Yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna say, you don't even have to play them as evil. I'm firmly in the belief that there's no good and evil creatures. I think there's good and evil actions. So I think you can play them as like, man, you're doing a bunch of shady shit right now, but you're not our big problem. So are you helping us or are you against us? And I like the idea of someone who's gives the players pause, but could actually be a good ally.
Interesting. And what I was going to say was they are extraordinarily clever also. If I'm not mistaken, I think their intellect score is like scorchingly high. So
you make me want to look it up now.
They make for good masterminds and plot makers, I believe. On that train of thought. Oh, you've never encountered one?
Only one time that I know. So Sunday nights in Jason's Benalia campaign, we were trying to figure out how to get into the planes of hell, and a Rakshasa that we had come across previously that we didn't know was very apt to help us get there. And so he did. We killed him again before we went there, but his friends made sure we got there accordingly. But I honestly, as a player, could not recall afterwards, because like, they hunt you. Like, the cool thing about them, like, that I think is really interesting is it's like, once you wrong them, you can never be right in their eyes again. They're forever going to hunt you. So when they die and go back to their plane of hell, they'll respawn and they'll come back, and then they're looking for you again. So you're like their mortal enemy for the rest of forever, because they actually don't die. So I was trying to think as a player when the DM hit us with that, and I had to learn what a Rakshasa was. Who did we wrong so terribly? Like, which NPC that we possibly murder hoboed along the way was actually this creature? And I still don't know, and we haven't even been playing that game since January. February. I still don't even know.
It's gonna come out like right at the end, and it's gonna be this huge reveal, and everyone's gonna die.
We're going to be at HooliCon 2052, and me and Jason are going to be standing around talking about the origins of heroes and hooligans. And he's going to say, you know that Rakshasa? Well, it was so-and-so. And I'm going to say, it only took you 30 years to tell me, but I'm glad you finally did, buddy. That's how it's going to go, probably.
Well, to that, you were talking about how the Rakshasa actually kind of breaks all the rules.
Yep.
Is there a house rule that you like to include in your games that is a staple for your games that your players love or may not love? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm pretty boring when it comes to that. I allow a lot of homebrew. I make a lot of homebrew. I make items. I make subclasses. I do, all the 9 yards. But when it comes to home rules, I've actually become almost more strict on the Dungeon Master's Guide and like the Player's Handbook, just because as time has gone on, it's a lot faster when everyone knows the same rule, opposed to like, oh, well, let's make something up and we'll see how long it lasts. I guess the closest thing is I think a lot of people do this one, is the one free feat at first level situation. Just because it feels nice, it's fun to be able to say like, oh, not only am I extraordinary because a commoner has a 10 in everything, I have an 18 because of a feat, and like that makes some people feel like, oh, this is awesome, this is how I'm standing out. But I don't think that's wild or crazy nowadays.
No, I don't think so. But I think that it helps the players stand out against the backdrop to make them more in line with story protagonists, and gives them that extra edge in conquering the challenges of the story ahead.
What about as a player, though? Like, do you have a player, like, sitting at a table with any of the GMs for any of the games that you played? Has there been any house rule that you've rolled across that as a player you're like, yeah, this may not be raw, but this is kind of cool, I like this?
I've ran in one, and it was very short, a Gestalt game. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gestalt idea.
Yeah, usually it's the one player or one character takes on two classes.
Yeah, at first level, you are the equivalent of two classes, and I've done that for a very short time, and that was fun. You get a lot of resources very early on. It usually just means you're fighting a lot more like minions, because the goal is, here's the secret to GMing, in my opinion. Your goal isn't to kill your players, it's to make them have almost no resources before they get to the boss, because then it really feels like you're struggling, even when like you are this badass superhero. But if you lose your superpowers, then it's like, oh man, now I have to, man, that fighter guy, he knows what's up. He knows that sword works every day. But like in a Gestalt game, because you have so many resources, if you're not fighting something all the time, you're just going to steamroll every boss you ever see.
And in that same vein, if the GM throws a harder challenge at you, did you find that was at least counterbalancing to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a game in exploring challenge, like how to actually break the system. And so we fought monsters that were definitely way too high of CR for our levels.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That in itself was pretty fun. I think anytime you get a moment to break your monotony, you should do it. So fighting probably CR5 creatures when we were level 1 seems a bit much, but it was like, oh, but I have enough spell slots, or I have enough abilities to keep myself going. I chose fighter to get that second wind, and fun stuff.
Absolutely.
So speaking of classes,
yes,
go ahead, Winter.
No, you go for it.
I was gonna say, so speaking of classes, you are currently working on a subclass for Bard.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Tell us about it. I want to know.
All about it. So I've had this idea probably since the pandemic started of introducing a voguing subclass. For those unfamiliar or uninitiated, and what I mean, I do not mean a magazine, although it is related. I'm referring to a dance style that was developed in New York City from the queer African and Latin American kind of culture. It developed because, lo and behold, racism also does exist in the LGBTQ community, especially back then. And someone says, come on, in Vogue. I can't do that. Don't put me on the spot. Oh my God. Maybe I'll get the courage. Yeah, maybe I'll get the courage. But
I've got some music, so we can work it.
Oh God. So the dance style and its culture is something I've been fascinated with for years. Like a lot of people, I was introduced to the documentary Paris is Burning, and it just introduced not only history, but style and understanding what all these movements are. And I thought, can I translate this, a whole dance style and culture, and put it into D&D? And so far, the answer is a resounding, it seems right, like I can. It seems right. It seems to be going exactly like I planning it. However, I'm coming up against a lot of obstacles. Mostly, how do I respect something with, I mean, 70s to like now, so like 50 years of
50
history.
years, yeah.
Yeah, and also represent it without, represent it accurately today, because Vogue today is very much different than Vogue when it started. In fact, I try to represent that. Vogue is traditionally put into 3 styles:
Okay.
Old Way, New Way, and Vogue Femme. Old Way is distinctly very hard line, very walking like the supermodel down the runway. You do a very dramatic pose. It's pretty classic. Zoolander is kind of what I would describe it to people who are like,
Okay.
"Oh, what's that like?" It's very much
maybe
having attitude.
maybe the forerunner of the runway and
Yep.
modeling. Okay.
Yep, and that's what it was inspired. Vogue gets its name from Vogue magazine because of the models and the photo shoots that were done. That's what really inspired it. A part of voguing culture is fashion, being very well dressed, being very well, showing that you can, especially in New York at that time when there was a lot of, I mean, still is a lot of poverty, but a lot of poverty. It was a big deal to be able to have a fancy going clothes to go out in.
Mm-hmm.
And while a lot of the scene is also seen as a home for a lot of misfit people, there were people who just wanted to be in the scene to look fabulous. So we had people with money, you had people with no money that were literally stealing clothes out of shops so that they could go that night to the Vogue to the competition and perform. So that was kind of like what it was like when it began, and again, it was a response to racism in the pageant scene. Actually, it was kind of well known and it was well known and documented that if you were brown like myself, you might do well in a pageant. You probably aren't going to win a pageant. You might be seen as a great performer, you might be seen as beautiful, you might be seen as someone who can sew like no other, but you're not a classic. You're not the good old boy situation, which sounds weird to say, but it is true that there are people that were restricted. A lot of people would say the drag queen Crystal LaBeija is the mother of Vogue because she is famous for being so upset at not winning when she believed, and I can't say because there, to my knowledge, there's not a lot of footage of the actual event, that she stormed out and just cussed out the judges, everyone involved, saying, no, there is no way that they won. I should be the winner. And she basically caused enough of a scene to start a scene. People who didn't normally win these competitions started coming together and starting to do their own competitions, doing their own dances, doing their own categories of what is to perform, either gender or performing dance or performing attitude. And I think that's so magical, and it's a part of American history that is either seen as no one remembers the winners, but she lives forever. That is correct. Crystal LaBeija will live forever. The House of LaBeija does live on. So, but taking this something that is so uniquely American and beautiful and not represented, I feel like, in D&D. I don't feel like dance is actually very well represented in D&D, even though the bard is the music class, because you have to cast with a musical instrument. There's no movement. You can hang out in the mid or back lane. This is my D&D speak. Mid lane, back lane. You can do that as a bard. You don't have to get close. I'm designing this subclass with the intention that you will start voguing and you will get close to the enemy and you will be hard to hit because your movement is helping you, but you're also like stunning people with poses. You are hypnotizing them. You are making your allies just more excited and more like you are giving your charisma off to help your allies. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
And I agree with you. I think that typically bards don't have a lot of variety. Yeah, they can play a musical instrument and a whole bunch of different musical instruments, but where is the dance? Where's the painter? Where's the writer?
Yeah,
or just the speech artist, the person who can give these great, imaginative, inspiring speeches, or poems, reading poems, that kind of stuff. So it's actually really refreshing to have a different perspective on that. And I'm really looking forward to the release of your finished product. I would love to see that. And you said you've been sending it out to others for, kind of read-throughs and such?
Yeah, I put out like an open call for anyone who is interested. And I've got about 30 people who are like, hey, send it my way. And I, send it off, and I'm getting feedback slowly but surely. And I mean, it's been so fascinating finding out people. So I call this subclass the College of the Ballroom, mostly because I think College of the Vogue is a little bit too dead on, and ballroom is the location that that people perform in. You perform in the ballroom, and I have a feeling that's going to cause confusion because people are going to like, oh, is it like ballroom dancing? In a way, yeah, in a way, because you're dancing, but it's relevant to its own thing. But then there's when I sent it out, I originally called it the College of the Five Elements, because Vogue is categorized by 5 major elements: hands, spins and dips, floor performance, catwalk, and duck walk. So these 5 categories are or criteria. I'll call it criteria because category has its own meaning in Vogue. But these 5 criteria are the elements that make up Vogue as we know it. And people read that and they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be like the 4 Elements monk. I thought you were going to be a bard that's all about like fire and water and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's confusing. Okay, I got you. So it's just, there's a lack of knowledge which I want to fill with this, and just having this feedback has really shown me, like, I think I just said it like a couple minutes ago, like when you obsess with something for a couple years now, you forget who doesn't know. You forget that I can say something and people are like, oh, what the hell is, I mean, I know what a death drop is, but what do you mean by dip? I'm like, dip's different. It's more. It's more clever. You're a little bit more stylish than a straight drop.
Sure. And whatever thought I just had just kind of flew out the window. Anyway.
I would actually love to see that played out. I currently am DMing a campaign that is Oops All Bards. My Tuesday night group is a solid, it's all bards. And so they have very different subclasses. And, the current bard subclasses are mildly interesting, somewhat lackluster.
They're fine. They're good. Yeah. Wizards, they're good. Don't worry about it. I mean, you could use some work, but it's good.
Oh, I did remember it. So you spend that all that time researching and then building and writing based on what your research is. you start to absorb it like a language, and
Yes.
all the terminology and everything else becomes so natural to you. So when you go to talk about it to somebody else and they look at you with this quizzical, very confused look, you're just like, oh, right, I need to teach you the lingo and that kind of stuff.
I actually had. Oh,
sorry,
great. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. You're asking me, but
please.
Well,
share your
I was
story.
just gonna say,
I like them.
Okay, sorry. I'm. Hello, my name is Logan. I like to talk. It's hard to shut me up. So it's a good thing idea. It's a good thing idea. So I had a lot of people who, when I'm on draft 2 with my beta readers and testers, and on the first draft, I kept on getting people saying, I don't know what these words mean. I have no idea what these mean. You describe them, but I don't really have a good idea. And I'm like, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. So draft 2 introduced like a whole side column of history and facts about it. And I'm getting the feedback of like, oh, it's so good that I have this side is my class features, this side is my like history, so I like can understand a little bit more. I am now looking at it and going, that's cool, but this is not how subclasses are usually written. So it looks a little clunky. It looks a little bit a little off. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I've kind of started to come into the context of maybe I don't need to mimic wizards. I just need to have the feeling that you understand it. Like if you understand how the bard from the player's handbook works, you can read this and understand how to make it work. But I do think I owe it to this class to make it more elegant. So if for anyone who reads this at some point in the future, which I hope is relatively soon, I don't want to have just boxes of text next to what your subclass can do. I want to weave it, or if not weave it, put it as a forward, or maybe something at the back as a love letter to what this concept is and what it means to me.
Sure. And I think that's a very ambitious and worthwhile goal. To that end, with the context of that, when putting it into your world, let's say that you finish it or you're going to play test it, however, and you have maybe one of your players who wants to take up the Vogue Bard, what kind of context do you see that fitting into in the world that you typically run?
I'm a homeless GM. I make too many worlds. I can't stay in one place.
Yeah, right.
But I would say what Vogue is when you think about Vogue, you have to think of houses. Houses are not only a physical place where you can go and stay, it is a family. It is something that gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. So I would feel if someone wants to play a voguing bard, your character is someone who has been an outcast. Someone has put you out either of it could be as simple as you've been, outcasted from your family, not from your whole community. Maybe you just did something to offend your family and you're put out, but it could be as far as your community. And now you're looking for a new home. Houses they were formed to house a lot of basically homeless queer youth. They were wandering New York City. They had nowhere to go. Drugs were rampant I think last time I looked at the statistics, it's not nearly as bad, but it's hardly as bad. But the amount of drugs that were just on the streets of New York City, you literally couldn't. It was hard to avoid any of it. So having a place that you could lay your head and people that you could trust was insanely important. And I think a lot of people who play D&D, there's the classic edgelord, the guy who, I am Stabby McStabberston, I am the darkest of rogues, I am a loner, no one knows who I am. And that's fine. If you want to play that character, go for it. I am 110% behind it. We're going to make it actually work so it's not so edgy. Maybe we can blunt some things here. But I think someone who wants to play someone who is vulnerable, someone that has gone through some kind of trauma and wants to work through it, someone that feels like they shouldn't be ashamed of who they are, this is what this class is for. This is for someone who wants to feel, look at me, not only am I fantastic, not only am I beautiful, not only am I fabulous, you should look at me. I am owed this tribute. I think it is the most narcissistic, but I love the narcissism. I thrive off of it. I think you should, as a player, be fully willing to jump in and engage with, I am amazing. I'm going to yell it to the rooftops, and that's what I want to do with this class, this subclass.
That's fantastic. It makes me really want to create one like right now and start playing, which I wonder, do you know any DMs or anyone who would be, or have you worked with any DMs to be able to play the class yourself?
Pandemic still exists, so it's hard to get out and see people. I do still go to my friendly local game store. A lot of people are playing D&D, but most of them are either new to the hobby or so entrenched in their own games. It's hard to find, I think, a homebrew community in my local area. Most of what I've done for testing has been, so I mentioned when we were talking about anime, I mentioned the tournament, episode.
Yes,
you do a tournament thing. If my gaming group can't make it, but where most of us are free, instead of just, we'll do something else, we'll instead roll up a character and fight the most strongest monster we can find in the DMG or whatever book we have. And
just flip through, find one, go with it.
Monster Manual, not DMG, excuse me. But yeah, we'll flip through, we'll find something. I threw something from Strixhaven that they'd never seen before, and that was fun. But I was able to test the bard that way as a player. It has gone through revisions since then because it didn't give the flavor I wanted, which is why playtesting is so important because I didn't feel like it was able to get into combat and both give enough inspiration to help my allies, which that was also a problem. It turns out in a one-on-one situation, bards actually have this problem where they can't inspire themselves. So,
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, so it made me go like, well, I can't just give you a little pet to justify your existence. That's not fair. But it did make me think, can you somehow give inspiration to yourself and not break this class? I don't think so yet. But that's about the extent of me like being able to try it myself in another setting. Because like I said, it's still hard to just go out and see a bunch of people. It's hard to get someone to agree to something that's crazy. If I had my way, I would just do my tournament stuff online, but it's hard for me to sync that up with people because then I could say, bring the craziest thing. Hey, I'll also bring something really crazy and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And it's really hard to find those who you're going to vibe with in that and want that same kind of experience. I've had that similar search go on for cast or DM or other players to that match with my particular style or what I'm looking for. So I'm right there with you.
I actually don't like playing in person, so online is my go-to. So it's just more of a vibe for me. I actually rolling across Twitter yesterday, I think Jason commented on something that somebody had posted that asked, do you prefer online or in person? And immediately I was like, dude, online. Because the first time I actually DM'd for somebody that wasn't like my husband and my kids in person was in December. My DMing started online. So the first time I ever did it in person was in December. And I couldn't keep my head on. I couldn't think straight. I was overly anxious. I felt this overwhelming sense of urge to perform at a different capacity than my normal like on-screen DM performance. And even though the players had fun, that's the most important thing to me. We did have fun, but as a DM, I felt like I wasn't able to put my full DM out for them. So I give you mad props for running those tournaments in person, because I would fall over dead worse than the monster.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I've had, before pandemic times, like I said, 7+ years of experience. I've been running at local like game stores for a while, and I've even run at local cons before. So like, I think it is valid either way, but you get used to it the more you do it. That's and I mean that for both ways, because my first online experience was when the pandemic started in my gaming group. We need our D&D fix. How are we going to get it? I mean, it was over Discord, and no one had cameras, so it was all voice. So Theater of the Mind was fun, but I had this fun little moment where I could narrate and explain things with my eyes closed, that sounds strange, but it was one of those things where I could visually picture what I'm talking about. And when I normally talk, like when you talk to someone, it's expected you make eye contact and you're, making sure people are engaged. But when I was doing it through Discord, I got this new feeling of like, I can just go. Nothing is holding me back.
Yeah.
So
I can totally see that, taking out the visual of your environment might allow you to better envision and concentrate on the visual that you're creating in the story. So I think that's absolutely valid. I think that my playing either in real life or online is more of a practical issue, and both of what I've done a lot of. I learned to play D&D when I was like 12, and I've played ever since. And it's only in the past like past decade, I'll say, that I really got into like the physical aspects of tabletop. I've got the maps. I've got a whole bunch of miniatures that I still have yet to paint. I got
the struggle is real.
Do you paint miniatures?
I have everything for it, and I have a broken mini down here that I did paint. I 3D printed it, and then I painted it, and then it broke very quickly, which made me made me go, oh, maybe I need to find some new
plastic or the
material. I haven't. Yeah, let's just go read the material.
Or resin.
Just resin. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Like I use UV light to cure it. That's resin. Why can't I say the word resin? Anyway.
Yeah. I've got all these physical tokens that I wanted to use to make these grand environments for my players, and then the pandemic happens, and I have to adapt to the online style, and I start running games online for cons and my friends, and pick up games here and there, and then I start doing the streaming stuff. And now I don't know about going back, because there's no cleanup, or at least barely any cleanup. I just have to like fix some tokens on a map. I don't have to have everybody come over to my house, and they may not need to. It's just so much easier. And then I've developed the skills of, manipulating Roll20 or Foundry. Like, I've got these skills. May as well use them.
VTT is a godsend. Like, oh my gosh, if we didn't have these virtual tabletops, because I eventually did start running into Foundry, because I'm like, oh, I buy this thing and then it works. And if we didn't have it, just imagine like all the people who I think there's been a huge influx of players in all tabletop games, because it's really simple now. You can almost say we've gamified it, but not quite. But because it's already a game, so you can't say you gamified something that's already a game. But it is a little bit more gamified.
Well, I will say that in terms of VTTs, I think we've seen an influx of those as well. There's now a huge demand for it, especially because of the pandemic. And people might have gotten sick of Fantasy Grounds and wanted something different. So there's Roll20, or they found Foundry and really like that. I discovered one at PAX East, Alchemy, which is still being developed, and but I love it. I love the atmosphere of it. But I remember, like, way back when, there weren't a lot of options, but now we have like a dozen or more, and it just fills a market that I think everybody was looking for, but nobody really knew it until the pandemic.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think it's because there wasn't a drive for it, you know. Like, I could go into the classic, you know, we are nerds that live in our mother's basements, so we have to get together and crowd upon a table. And it's like, okay, or we could go out and do something a little bit different. And I think what the pandemic did is like, okay, we can't all crowd around the same basement anymore, but we still want to interact. And people who were like itching for their D&D fix, just like, well, we have the technology.
We have the technology. We will make him bigger, faster, stronger, whatever.
Yep.
Speaking of PAX East, I went to a panel of diverse individuals, LGBTQA, BIPOC. Like, I loved getting to see those different perspectives and hear about those. Do you think that VTTs have helped those communities? Do you have you found a community in those VTTs of people similar to yourself? Because I know there was some talk at those panels about not knowing other people from their same demographic.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would say, so it's interesting, right? So the internet always draws us closer together. It makes the world smaller because we can find like-minded individuals. Mm-hmm. So just having a location to find games and people to join in them, it's amazing because you don't know until you know how many people are like you out there. Because I'm from the Midwest, and it's not a small town, but it's smaller than most people who would call it a city. Most people wouldn't call where I live a city, even though it has to be categorized as such. But I don't know a lot of people who are Black and queer, except in my gaming group. So like, we found each other, but to find more people, it's pretty hard. Like the well dries up faster than you think. And I think VTT's made it so you could reach out to someone who lives a continent away and play a game, the same game you both dreamed of. And I mean, that's amazing, and I'm so happy for it. I'm happy that we have this opportunity now, and I'm looking forward to see how it will grow. I mean, I'm meeting a lot of people right now because I'm relatively new to this space, and I'm only saying relatively because I think I really haven't gotten active since the last 4 months, which I guess now that seems, was it even 4 months? It might even used to be 3 months, but like, I'm meeting so many people that I didn't know were out there, or how easy it was to find these people, because we've been, I guess there's been like a moment of told, like, this isn't all for you, and that's not true at all. It's totally for you. It's for everyone.
Everyone, absolutely.
I think, yes, TTRPGs are for everyone, right? Like, you have that old school kind of mindset, right, where it was like the boys that played in the basement and like no girls allowed, right? Like all of that. So, and it's like opened up to more than such now. Like, there are so many female GMs in the space. There are a lot of people of color coming out in the space, and it makes me very happy to see. Like, we just got the first book that was based around different cultures rather than just one, so I thought that was super.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't even, like, there's so much good. There is so much good in that book. I am so excited, not only for representation, because hey, it matters, but to have perspectives that are different will color, like, people can call it whatever it is. I'm in these circles, so I know people are like wizards or whatever. D&D is our own thing. We do whatever. But and Wizard is a corporation, so they're allowed to be, you know, soulless. That's their prerogative. I understand this. But I am hoping that the Radiant Citadel will open up so many people to just try to write their own adventures. So many people to try to put their culture into Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I could go on. I gush. My heart just beats so excited for this one book. And I am someone who never runs, like, I never run pre-made adventures. I've done it like twice, and both times I'm like, meh, I like my own thing. I don't care. I want to run this. I want to run it upwards and downwards. I want to go from level 1 to level, I think 14 is where they expect you to finish, because that's usually where they finish most of their books. Yeah. But like, let's do it. Let's have an adventure in worlds we've never touched before. And gosh, Wizards should pay me for this. But like,
really should.
It's so exciting.
Yeah, Journeys to the Radiant Citadel is 17 Black and brown creators that have brought their cultures into the D&D space. 17 different adventures, all written in their own separate styles with their own lore, their own creatures, things like that in it. And I'm really excited to see that, because it's going to also bring cultural diversity to things. And I'm really happy to see the TTRPG community shedding the old stereotypes for certain characters, like the racial nomenclatures and things that were used as, you know, goblins, for example. We don't have to go into anything past that, but like that kind of stuff being dropped away, and we're moving away from those sort of like anti-Semitic rhetoric that was wrapped into goblins to something completely different. And I think having books like Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel really opens up for more inclusivity and diversity in the community, which I love to see. So, speaking of community, Logan, tell us where we can find you outside of the show right now.
You can find me on Twitter. That is where I live for now, until things change, until I figure out technology and stuff more, because I do have the hope and the dream of streaming at some point. And then you can catch me there whenever that will be. But you can find me at Twitter at Logan the DM. You can also email me if you just want to chat at loganthegm@gmail.com. I couldn't choose. I don't know. I should change my Twitter handle. I think GM is a lot more neutral. Although secretly
I prefer it myself, yeah.
I've actually like had this like, can I convince the world to go to my own handle of GG for Game Guide? Because I feel like it's a lot more, it's more telling what your goal is. I'm here to guide you through the game. That's my job. But that's where you can find me. Email me, at me on Twitter, send me a direct message. I don't care. DMs are open.
And tell us one project that you want to kind of promote. We talked about your Bard subclass, so if you want to promote that some more, or anything else that you've got working on. Tell us something that you want to promote in your community right now.
So probably the one thing, I don't think I've really talked about it much besides vague posting. I have this dream of making my own tabletop RPG game. I mean, I think everyone who develops does, right? And I've been working on this concept of, what if some world disaster, I'm not sure what yet, but some world disaster scarred humanity so much that it gave us all psychic powers. And not like everyone is full on throwing knives with their brain. Most people can just like lift a spoon a couple centimeters off the ground. But then there are some people who have been altered by this so badly that they are manifesting their psychic powers as like spirits. I'm very heavily inspired by JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and the Persona games. So if anyone's played those, or I guess the Shin Megami Tensei games as well, if you've played those or seen JoJo, you kind of get the idea of like, I'm walking around, I'm a normal dude, and now I have this giant, like, I don't know, let's go spider that's behind me doing things for me with my psychic brain powers. And that's like, I've been calling the project Altered. So if you follow me, you might see me throw out some flavor text that I put out there, because I think flushing out the world with small bits and pieces is the best way I can develop the theme. So that's the big thing that I'm probably still working on. Still want to hammer out all the details.
Yeah, fantastic. I look forward to seeing it. I'm really super excited for College of the Ballroom.
Yeah.
That being said, thank you everybody in the audience for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here and roll into the show following after us, which directly after this show, Jason will be DMing the second session of the short shot that he put together, Whistle for the Choir. So you will see us there momentarily. Don't go anywhere. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Logan, for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Logan.